And we are going to talk about start leading the church you have. And this is something that it came to me. And it's one of those topics that, like, I usually write a blog post in half an hour to an hour. And this is one that, over the course of several weeks kept coming to mind. Maybe I was reluctant to follow it or whatever. But I just started looking around and the situation that we're in, and enough time has passed. It's been 20 months since the big shutdown occurred last year. And if it had been a couple of months, our churches would have snapped right back. But 20 months, I mean, the whole culture has changed considerably. And so the question is, in the context of this culture that we're in now, how do we fulfill the mission of the church? And so in order to start leading the church you have, the other side of that is, let me get my pointer of the right thing. We got to stop leading the church that you lost. And I don't say that flippantly. I say that's a painful thing. I happen to be attending the church that I grew up in. We just moved back to my hometown of Topeka, Kansas, and I am attending church with my dad and sitting in a building that used to be packed out with 500 people. And now there's about 50 people there. And 6 of them are related to me, and 5 of them live in my house. And I thought, man, this is a far cry from where this church was in the 70s and 80s. And I know they hit it big in the 90s, but I was gone by then. And I thought 38 years later, coming back, that I had to begin to, I have all the memories there of what was important growing up and how things were growing up. But I had to begin to put all of that aside. And there's a variety of circumstances. Part of it was the pandemic. Part of it was poor leadership. Part of it was some decisions that were made in the middle of the pandemic that didn't help anybody. But the poor pastor that ended up with it, I pray for him a lot, and he's a good man. But we can't go back to the church that we had, 40, 50 years ago. But the reality is we can't go back to the church we had 2 years ago. So here's the reality that we're facing. And I've said some of this in my blog, is that stadiums are full, but sanctuaries are half empty. And we see that. I was watching the World Series last night and watched the Atlanta Braves win. I always said the World Series would be perfect if it was 2 National League teams. And I think with the Astros converting over from the National League, we had that. But it was packed out. Nobody wants to miss the event. Same thing is with the Chiefs game. Same things with college football games and everything that you watch with all of your teams. The stadiums are full. But people are not coming to church, and it's for a variety of reasons. Some people are not coming because of COVID. They still have some concerns. Maybe they have compromised health. Maybe they want to keep their kids away. Some people aren't coming because of convenience. It's easier to stay home in your jammies with your cup of coffee and watch the church on the service online. And so there's a convenience part of that. And then the other part of that, there are people that are new, that have never darkened the door to your church, that are logging in, and they want the truth of God's word. They want something to answer their questions and to help them. So we have to embrace where we're at right now. So we have to stop looking backward. 20 months has passed. Like I said, 2019 is gone. We can't lead backward. We have to lead forward, unless you have to have one of these contraptions. And then maybe you could go backward. But unless Marty McFly is in your congregation, I don't know that you're going to go back to the future, if you will, right? But again, in this, I'm not just saying, oh yeah, just forget everybody that left, forget everything that used to be, forget all of the things that you worked so hard for, and just move forward, because that's not so easy. Because we have a loss. We have a significant loss, things that we've worked hard at, people that we have spent time with, people that we have invested in, and they are gone. Whether they haven't made it back, or whether they were flipping around on their computer and found a church service they liked better. And in some cases, they didn't agree with us on what we were doing with or without masks and that sort of thing. It's a loss of what you've built, a loss of people that you've known. And when we experience a loss, we need to mourn that loss. The first church I served at I went there in 1990, fresh out of seminary. And about a year and a half later, our founding pastor had to resign. And we lost, I actually calculated the numbers today. We lost 72% of our congregation. Everybody that liked the pastor left. Everybody who didn't like the pastor left, which I was a little puzzled by that because he left, but they were just embarrassed that they were even there. All of the staff left except for me. I tried to leave, but God wouldn't release me. And so at the end of 1992, when our new pastor came in, it was me and 85 people. And I felt the grief of all of those other people as if they had all gone on a trip somewhere in a bus and the bus had gone off a cliff. That was the sort of grief that I was experiencing. So this is a significant loss. And while we would like to long to go backwards, we can't go backwards. We can't lead backwards, but we do need to acknowledge and we need to grieve our loss because it's there. So if we haven't met, and many of you I know, hi, Ed, I see you came in. Hi, Deb. And Jay and I were just chatting. Who is Alan White? That's a good question, isn't it? Well, I am, my wife and I, this is my zoo and these are my monkeys. Maybe these aren't monkeys, but anyway, my wife and I have been married 21 years. We have 4 children. So 2 of them are in there, one with a mask on. But my oldest is 20, have 2 in high school, 16, 14. And then our youngest is 8. And he's a lot of fun. They're all a lot of fun. I'm an author of several books with my name on them. I'm the author of many books with other people's names on them. And I have a podcast and I do other things. I have a weekly blog, other ways that I pollute the internet. So thank you for those of you who follow what I do. So let's go to this. We need to lead the people that we have. We need to lead the people that we have. God has uniquely positioned you and your church for this season. I'm going to read it again. God has uniquely positioned you and your church for this season. God is not surprised by what's happened in the last 20 months. God didn't look down and say, oh, myself, I can't believe that happened. He didn't. God has uniquely positioned you and your church for this season. But here's the thing. It's not going to look the way that it looked before. And this is the frustration. This is why you're on my webinar. This is why a lot of pastors are quitting, because things have changed and things are so different in 20 months. Everything went so fast to change. Now it's like, we're not prepared. How are we prepared for this world that we're currently living in? Because it is so different from what we've experienced. But let me tell you this, and this is from my own experience back in 1992. Let me tell you what's great about the church that you have. Your church is united in mission. The people who are with you, the people who show up on Sunday, the people that you regularly hear from that are online, they are with you and they are united in mission. When we lost 72% of our congregation, the 85 people that we had left, when we began to cast vision for what was next for the church, they were with us. They weren't fighting against us. They were celebrating it. Now, when we began to implement the vision, they were like, oh, wait, what's going on? And it's like, well, we're doing the things we talked about. It's like, oh, wait a minute, really? But your church is united. They're for you. They are for your church and they're ready to do something. So stop waiting for everybody else to come back and move with the movers, move forward with the people that you have. Your givers are still with you. This is what I'm hearing all across the country from churches, is that attendance is down, giving is steady or sometimes more, and that baptisms and salvations and baptisms are up. Well, if giving is steady and your attendance is down, who left? Who left? So your givers are with you. So anything that you want to change, this is the season to change it. And I know that everybody spent the last 20 years or 20 months. I talked to a pastor who's pastored for 25 years. And he said, I've never worked harder to have more people upset with me at any other time in my ministry. And I think that's true. And I think you've all experienced that to some level. Your church is reaching more new people than ever. And it's online. It's online. You see, Jesus is still the answer. It's just that all the questions have changed, right? But as your church has gone online, people are getting a glimpse into your church. And here's the interesting thing is that it used to be we would do the seeker service and we did contemporary music and we had relevant messages, which I'm still in favor of all of that. Not the smoke machine. If you have a smoke machine, that's okay. But I'm in a church with no smoke machine and I can still feel the presence of God, FYI. But anyway, but now the front door of the church is not the front door. I did an interview last month with Bill Willits from North Point. North Point's attendance is 50% of what it was previously. North Point's groups are 50%. They still have more than everybody else, but it's 50%. And so we talked about the analogy that they use of the house. If you have the front porch and you have the living room and the dining room and the kitchen, and how they would, the front porch was the weekend service, and then people would gradually get into groups. And I said something, he says, yeah, we have the front porch. And Bill Willett says, look at all the people. And because it's not the same, but what's happening is people are watching online before they show up at church. People are joining small groups before they show up at church. But going specifically to online, we got to tune that up and we have to use it, because there are a lot of people that they want to see what's going on at church. They want to watch your service knowing that nobody's watching them. So online's been very popular. I know everybody got, not everybody, but a lot of people got a little bit lazy during COVID, and it's easier just to sit around and watch. But there's a lot of people that are peeking in. And here's the interesting thing. Your first-time guests, I don't know if you've experienced this, your first-time guests are ready for next steps. They're not, let's, introduce you to the church. Let's meet the pastor. They've already been introduced to the church. They've already met the pastor online. And so when they show up, they are ready to get baptized. They are ready to take your growth track. They are ready to join your church. They are ready to join a small group. They are ready to start serving. So it's a very different environment for when people actually show up, especially when they've been online. So we're going to talk in a minute about what's ahead in 2022. And I want to share some research. Actually, it comes from a secular company, but I think it has some profound implications for the church. But first, you're going to have to tolerate a little bit of a commercial. So right now I'm forming the 2022 small group ministry coaching group. And so our goals would be, it would help you to recruit more leaders, form better groups. Now, what I mean by that are groups that like each other, that'll stay together, make more disciples, coach and train your leaders, measure the metrics that matter. Say that 3 times fast. And our goal is to help you take the guesswork out of groups. And so some of it was complicated before. Some of it got a lot complicated in the last 20 months. But in the last 20 months, I've had the privilege of working with 20 churches that I've coached, either in coaching groups or individually. I've helped 80 more churches in various courses and webinars and things that I've done. And then I've served as a life group pastor, which this has been important actually to the work that I do, that I am the outsourced life group pastor for a church in Lansing, Michigan. In fact, about an hour ago, I was sitting at my computer and I realized that our groups, we didn't have a tag. I'm learning a new database. We didn't have a tag indicating what day of the week the groups met. It was in the description, but there was no tag to look up, who meets on Monday. So I was sitting there for an hour putting tags on 100 groups. But it's been good for me because I'm not talking about, here's things that worked great 15 years ago. I'm talking about these are things that are working now. That church, we actually started the year with 29 groups. Right now, we have 99 groups. So we've increased by 70 groups. I think at one point we said it was 176%. If you're into those kinds of numbers, we haven't reached our goal. Our goal is to have 80% of the congregation in groups. So we're getting there. And the churches that I worked with this year, almost every church, there have been a couple of exceptions, and I'll tell you why. Almost every church has more groups today than they had last year. They have more people in groups today than they had last year. They are coaching every leader, and they are reaching their communities with groups. I had one pastor that very sheepishly was reporting that they had more people in groups than they have in their weekend service. And he said, but there's one group I don't know if we can count. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, the only person who's a member of our church that's in the group is the lady that started it. And she started the group in a nursing home, and she has 30 people in the nursing home participated in her small group. And I said, of course you can count it, because the goal is, yeah, we want to get our people connected, but man, if we can empower our people and give them permission and opportunity to reach the community, that's what it's all about. Now, the churches that haven't done this yet is for one of two reasons. One is that they haven't implemented the strategies and they kept doing it the same old way. And you're like, why in the world did you pay all that money for coaching? And I'm scratching my head too. The other is churches that are planning to launch something in the new year because they just started in a coaching group with me and they haven't launched yet. So let me tell you what the coaching group includes. And this commercial is almost done, so hang with me. It's a cohort of 8 churches. 8 is great. I take no more than 8 at a time. We meet for 6 months as a group, twice a month. We meet for 12 months, once a month, one-on-one. So that way we can, in the group, we talk about best practices. In the one-on-one, we talk about how can we customize the best practices to fit the culture of your church. I've worked with over 1,500 churches across North America in the last 17 years. And what I realize is the region that a church is located in, the history of that church, the denomination, the ethnicity. I mean, there's so many factors that we just can't go cookie cutter. We have to customize it to what your church needs. So in the 20 churches that I'm working with right now, well, we're doing 20 different versions of the same thing, but they're different versions. It includes books and courses, includes templates, timelines, samples, and examples. That way you don't have to start with a blank page when you need to find out what are the things you need to say to recruit more group leaders. I will give you, here are things that we've said that, this particular piece, Chip Ingram used, and he recruited 400 group leaders over 3 weeks. And this is a sermon that Dr. Tony Evans preached and recruited 250 on Labor Day weekend. So I give you those kinds of things. You have to start from scratch. So there's 3 options for this, and then we're going to move on. Option 1 is the group with the monthly one-on-ones, all the things I described, and that's $525 for 6 months. Payments. It's a 12-month group. Option 2 is you would get everything I just described, plus you would get an assessment and 2 on-site visits. Some of that's to evaluate, reevaluate, debrief. Some of it we could shoot video curriculum and I could help you direct that. We could do leader training. And so the cost of that is $525 for 12 months. And then the third option is an additional one-on-one a month. So you have 2 one-on-ones in addition to 2 meetings. And then the 2 visits, and then I would help you write curriculum for 2 series, and that's a little more. It's $1,050 for 12 months. And of course, if you pay any of that up front, we would give you 5% off of the total amount, and most people pay up front. The other thing is, if you sign up right now, this is November, the group starts in January. So if you sign up right now, I would give you coaching for November and December one-on-one for free. And we could get ready for whatever you're headed into in the first of the year. So if you're interested, you can go to my website, alanwhite.org/small group coaching, SG coaching. I'll send you this. Or you can call me or you can send me an email. All right. Let's talk about what's ahead for 2020. Enough for the commercial. Thank you for being patient with that. The Gage Group, Gage Research is a research firm based out of Washington, D.C. They are not Christian. This is a secular research company, and this is what they report. It's what's ahead for the 4th quarter of 2021 that has implications for 2022. And we're going to see this, and it's going to be like, are you kidding? I'm on a webinar to hear this because we're church people. We know some of this stuff. But remember, this is a secular research company, and this is what their research from real people is telling them about what's important for people in this quarter of 2021. Here's the first one. Meaning matters for the holidays. Well, of course, meaning matters. We know that. Jesus is the reason for the season, right? But again, this is secular research saying that meaning matters for the holidays. And so we want to advertise meaning to our community. How to find meaning in life. What's the reason for the season, all those things we talk about. This is what we need to push out to people and emphasize. This is the meaning of it. This is the importance of having family and friends. This is the importance of having community. I'm preaching to the choir. I've had churches do 1-minute daily devotionals on video, 1-minute video devotionals. One pastor did 25 days to Christmas. And he gave 1 minute every day for 25 days, and people signed up and they passed them around to their friends. Or do a Christmas small group series. Or, I mean, a lot of you, you observe the Sundays of Advent. Do something related to your Advent season and push that out to your community. Meaning matters for the holidays. From secular research, can you believe it? We thought that nobody was going to listen to the church anymore after this last 20 months. Well, guess what? It matters. Here's the second one that Gage came up with. They said, start planning for spring. Okay, so we've got the fourth quarter of this year. We had the first quarter of next year. And so now we're talking about the second quarter of next year that people are going to start planning for spring. They're going to start planning for vacations. They're going to start planning for weekends away when the weather gets warmer and hopefully COVID has blown out to sea, then people are out of here. So what does that say to us? That says that we need to use the time that we have between now and Easter to do the things we want to do as a church, to launch groups, to reach our communities, to serve the poor, to do a lot of different ministries. We need to do it now before spring hits, because when spring hits, it's going to be, you know what, we compare this pandemic with the Spanish influenza of 1918, 1919. You know what came after the Spanish influenza did, don't you? The roaring 20s, and people traveled broadly and they were just gone. And I think that's what's going to begin happening in the spring, depending on, what variants are still around. So start planning for spring. The third thing, this is people planning for spring. So we've got while we have them between now and spring. All right. The third thing, and again, this comes from Gage research, is volunteerism and serving the poor. This was very high in their research of volunteerism and serving the poor. And there are a couple of reasons for this. One is there are more poor people than ever. There are more poor people than ever because the economy is so tough on people right now. I don't know about you, but my wife went to the grocery store last week and bought a normal order of groceries, and it probably would have cost us about $200. It was $350. And I mean, filling your tank up with gas, or, whatever else, prices are up. And so there are more people that are in poverty than there have been. But here's the other thing, and I thought this was interesting, is that some people, again, in the secular research, some people are feeling guilt because they're not suffering economically. So you have a group of people that are suffering economically, and then you have a group of people that are feeling guilt because they're not suffering. And of course, the answer to this, according to this research, again, was people with means serving those who don't have means. Now, isn't this interesting that, the meaning for the holidays and serving the poor are very much things that are centered around Jesus? And these are the trends that are being spotted by the secular research firm out of Washington, D.C. So what does this mean for your church? Some of you, your wheels are already turning. You're already thinking about these things. You need to evaluate which ministries matter. I jokingly am saying that I don't know that every church needs the parking team that they've had to the level they've had in the past, because not everybody's come back to church. So there's not a traffic jam in the parking lot. So all those people that volunteered in the parking lot, they can become small group leaders now because they have a little more time on their hands, right? But we need to evaluate which ministries matter and to see what are the things that your church wants to do. What is your church equipped to do? And you may not be able to do the same things at the same level that you did in the past, but with the people you have and with the needs that are before you, what can your church specialize in? How can your church begin to grow? Reassign staff and church members to things that are important to your church right now and things that are important to them. I don't know if you've seen the statistics, but droves of people in the last month or so have left their jobs for other careers because they don't want to do a menial task. There's an opportunity for them to advance themselves and do something that's a little more meaningful. Well, let's think about the same thing in terms of how people are serving in the church. If they're doing mundane tasks, and some people love that. They have a gift of serving, they have a gift of helps. They're right there. But other people, they were serving because the church needed help. But if we don't need help in that area anymore, it's time for them to move on. So maybe this is a time to help people evaluate their spiritual gifts and develop their skills and figure out, where to place them in ministry that would be meaningful to them and that would help the church to grow. Because again, you're not going to be able to do all of the bells and whistles that you did before, but where are you headed now? What are the needs and what are you uniquely equipped to do? Talking about your online service, tune up your online service. If you record your online service, you need to sit down and watch it. And then you need to fix it. Because what I've seen, even within big churches that have a lot of equipment, that have a lot of staff, sometimes the singers are out of tune because they need a separate mix, because the house mix is different from what it sounds like online. And I mean, I've watched all kinds of churches around the country in the last 20 months. And so you got to make sure it's in tune. When the pastor is preaching or anybody's presenting from the platform, you make sure you look at the camera, which is so hard because you want to look at the people, but you got to look at the camera, because if you don't look at the camera, then people are going to feel like, you don't care about them. Some churches are even, going to the links of recording a service ahead of time. And that's the service they show online. And then the regular service they're doing, with the experiencing with the people that are gathered on the weekend. However you want to do it, but pay attention. And the easiest thing is, if you're streaming your worship and your singers are flat and it's hard to listen to, maybe stop streaming that part and just stream the preaching. Just word to the wise. I've had these conversations with many people over the last year. But here's the most important thing with online. Expect the same from your online congregation as you do with your in-person congregation. Expect the same from your online congregation as you would from your in-person congregation. So if somebody's visiting online or in person for the first time, what do you ask an in-person guest? Hey, there's a card in your row. Take the card and fill it out and turn it in because you want their contact information. Same thing with online. And so they're not going to have a card in their row in their house, but they all have one of these. So go to, firstchurch.com/first time or start or whatever. And then they could fill out their contact information. And then if you give your in-person congregation a gift, give your online congregation a gift, and you have to pay to, postage, or they could stop by and you can meet them. They may not want to do that, but have a way for them to respond with everything. So if you have a next step class, if you have a growth track, offer that online. If you have small groups, don't just invite people that are gathered in person to host a group or to start a group. Invite people who are online. And here's the interesting thing about groups right now. Some people who are worshiping online are not comfortable in being in a big crowd, but they will go to an in-person small group. So just because they do worship online doesn't mean they want to do their group online. So give them options. You could do your group online, you could do your group in person, but expect the same of it. It's not a matter of, the people that are gathered in person on Sunday are the real people, and then the ones that are online are just, the bystanders. No, they're part of your congregation, and you need to treat them like part of your congregation. For Christmas, offer certainty in an uncertain world. Our world is very uncertain right now. The president's approval ratings are at his lowest. The economy is discombobulated. McDonald's is charging me $4 for an Egg McMuffin, but yet you can get hamburgers 2 for $3 during the day. I don't understand it. I mean, everything has been, people don't know if they're going to have their job. People are working multiple jobs. Things are going on in education. In a lot of different ways. There's a lot of uncertainty in our world, and a lot of people are beginning to wonder, is our country going to be okay? Well, here's what we're certain about. We're certain that Jesus came as a baby in the manger and in the form of a human being and brought his kingdom and died on a cross to save our sins and resurrected on the third day. We are certain of these things, because this is what God's word tells us. And this is what we've experienced in our hearts and know. So we need to offer people certainty in an uncertain world. That heaven and earth will pass away, but God's word will stay forever. I'm preaching to you now. What's certain is that God loves us, even when we're going through hard things, that God loves us. So we need to preach certainty. We need to present certainty in a world that is so uncertain. We need to plan our big small group launches for January to April. And then I would not plan a big small group launch for April and May next year, because people are going to be gone. Remember, they're planning ahead for spring now. So they're planning to get out of here as soon as the weather warms up. So don't buck against that schedule. Don't fight it. Just go with the schedule and, do your launch. Now, I wouldn't launch January 1st. I would take January to form your groups, to recruit your leaders. And then I would launch in February. Easter's late. Easter's April 17th. So you could possibly in, 11 weeks, you could do a couple of series. You could do a 6-week and a 4-week or 5-week, and then lead up to Easter. I wouldn't say don't offer anything, because there'll be some groups that'll want to continue, but I wouldn't do your big push for April or May, because I think you'd be a little bit disappointed. Give permission and opportunity to start new groups wherever they want to meet, however they want to meet, with whomever they want to meet. Just give people permission and opportunity, and they will surprise you. We had one group up in Michigan. This lady invited a couple of neighbors, and then the neighbors invited a few neighbors. And she said in our meeting, she said, I don't even know all the people who are coming to my group. She's getting to know them, but she didn't even know all the people that were going to her group. You just give permission and opportunity. People use platforms online that you have never heard of before, and that's okay. But if they're finding community online and they could find a way to gather a group of people and talk about spiritual things, then give them permission, give them opportunity to do that, support them, coach them, help them, let them do it. Offer basic training, offer coaching to them, have your experienced leaders walk alongside new leaders and help them. Give weekly leader tips. I record them on my phone and put them up to YouTube, and they're just basic things. What if people don't show up? What if they come late? What if they have a question that I don't know the answer to? What if somebody talks too much? I address 2 minutes on a video, and they'll watch the video. Provide some sort of curriculum, and the curriculum doesn't have to be complicated. It could be a 5-minute video. Your pastor shoots on a phone, put it up to YouTube. Here's 5 or 6 good questions, and that's your curriculum for the week. Offer these sorts of things and tell people, hey, whoever you know that would be interested in this topic, gather them and start a group. Some of you, just got very excited. Some of you just got a little terrified. That's all right. Expect people to disappear from April 2022 until fall 2022. Just expect them to be gone, and don't plan anything big after Easter. Once they get back, headed into fall, then you can start gearing up for your fall launch. But if your pastor says something different, then go with whatever your pastor says. But in general, this is kind of what to expect for next year. And then plan ahead for your fall 22 group launch, because I think that it'll be bigger than ever. And I thought we were going to have a fall small group boom this year. And then we got the Delta variant, and that kind of curtailed some stuff. Of course, I did talk to one pastor that said his senior pastor had just declared that as far as their church was concerned, COVID was over. I said, I wish I was that powerful, but I think by fall next year, we'll certainly be in good shape. People will be ready to connect with other people. People will be ready to cling on to what's important. And don't look at, I just have this handful of people left, or I have this small percentage of what we used to have, so it's going to be very easy to get them into groups. No, don't look at them as an audience. Look at them as an army. And so every person that's seated there on Sunday morning, every person that's viewing online, could they gather a handful of friends and start a group? So if you have 100 people, don't start 10 groups. If you have 100 people, start 100 groups. See what I'm getting at? Show God's love in practical ways to your community. Whether well-deserved or not, the church has taken a lot of knocks in the last couple of years. And all of our churches are very different. you know, denominationally, politically, our stands on various things. All of our churches are very different, but in some ways, we've kind of all gotten lumped into the same group. And the regard for that group by, the general population is somewhat negative. And it's not our fault, because we weren't out there waving the signs and marching and, all that sort of stuff. But the way that we overcome that is we show people who we really are. And we show them that we are people who belong to a God that loves us, that we belong to a God that loves them. And we love people. We love our neighbors as ourselves. Jesus said that. And so we need to show God's love in practical ways to our community, not expecting to make headlines, not expecting to make, a big publicity thing for ourselves, but even just neighbors to neighbors, just very practically helping people where we can help them, partnering with organizations that we may not have as much as we did before, but we can certainly help. We can certainly volunteer. We can certainly offer our time and what we do have, and let people get to know us and let people get to know our Jesus, and they will understand what this is all about. All right. Where is your church headed in 2022? This has been, it's like we've all been put in the spin cycle, and it's been a crazy, crazy, crazy time. But God knew this was coming. God has a purpose in all of this. Why did God allow the church to be shook up to the degree that it's been shaken up? I think partly because there were some things that we were clinging on to that just needed to fall off. And maybe there were some people we were clinging on to that needed to fall off. I know that's a painful thing to say. I'm not saying it in a hateful way. But where we are now, with the people that are with us, the people that are for us, the people that are for the church, the people that are giving, the people that are ready to do something, how can we give them permission and opportunity? How can we release them to start groups and to serve and to show God's love and to impact this world? Because the world still needs it more than ever. All right. That's done with my part. Questions, comments?